I think it's very important that conservatives assert their cultural and political power, because the field in which we're allowed to play now in politics, but also economically, the scope of things we're allowed to say and allowed to do is really shrinking. And it's not just being shrunk by big government, it's being shrunk by corporate America, it's being shrunk by the administrative state, it's being shrunk by big tech, it's being shrunk by a lot of companies that are adopting wokeism. Which brings me to a little bit of personal news from this show. It actually pains me to relate this, but I feel I have to do it. I feel I owe it to the listeners to relate this. We have a lot of advertisers on this show. Some of them share our values. Many of them don't share our values. And that's perfectly fine. We don't discriminate based on the views of some company, and they tend not to discriminate based on our views. And we think if we can have a good partnership, and if they've got a good product, we want to bring that good product to the people who listen to this show. Harry's Razors seems to have a big issue with us now, and a big issue, therefore, with our listeners. We found this out over the weekend. A Twitter account that has 2 followers, that does not, it doesn't seem to be the most prominent or legitimate real Twitter account, came out and it complained at Harry's to try to get Harry's to drop this show. Harry's Razors, and said, Harry's Razors is sponsoring Michael Knowles, who is spreading homophobic and transphobic content, and how it did all the phobias and all the isms and all that sort of thing. So Harry's, which has been a good partner on this show, and they make great razors, responded to this very small, it would seem not totally legitimate Twitter account by saying, thanks for bringing this up. We condemn the views in this video. What video is it? We'll get to that in a second. We condemn the views in this video which are inexcusable and at odds with our longtime support of the LGBTQ+ community. We've ended our relationship with this show and are looking into our sponsorships to prevent any values misalignment going forward. So I said, what video are they talking about? It's a video where I appeared on Candace Owens' show at PragerU years ago, and we were discussing the transgender question. And in discussing that, contradicted the sort of politically correct view and said, oh, maybe there's some questions here, right? I appeared on this show a year, I believe, before Harry's ever started advertising on this show. The purpose of this show is to explore the hot-button political and cultural issues and offer a conservative perspective on that, a perspective that is shared by tens and tens of millions, hundreds of millions maybe, of Americans, but that is not in line with the woke, politically correct fads and ideas that have really only cropped up very recently. Harry's knew that. They knew all this sort of stuff going in, but when a Twitter account with 2 people following it takes a hit to try to prevent conservatives from having advertisers, and therefore to prevent conservatives from, using good products, using good razors like Harry Razors, they go in, they buckle, they spread this then to their tens of thousands of Twitter followers. And they are saying, we condemn the views in this video. They're saying we condemn the views of conservative Americans. We think that the views of conservative Americans are inexcusable and at odds with our longtime views. Advertisers cancel on their campaigns with us sometimes. And then we get new advertisers sometimes. And that's totally fine. There are plenty of reasons why an advertiser might cancel a campaign. Maybe we're just not selling enough of their product. Maybe they don't like something that we said. Maybe, I don't know, maybe the wind blew in a certain way in the morning and they just had a change of heart. That's all totally fine. Advertisers have every single right to do that. It's just a very different thing when instead of just canceling their campaigns with us, they start attacking not just us at Daily Wire, but they start attacking our audience. And they say that our audience's views are condemnable, inexcusable, all sorts of language. Views which, by the way, no one's ever been quiet about, and which it would seem that certain advertisers are just being opportunistic when some random Twitter account says something about it. That's a very different thing. Advertisers more than free to cancel whenever they want. But when you start going after us in a really vicious way. When you start going after our listeners and our audience, then unfortunately for the advertisers, we need to speak up. There used to be a time in this country not that long ago where when you engaged in free associations with people, and I'm not even just talking about economic arrangements, I'm talking about civil associations, the PTA, the Lions Club, anywhere with your neighbors and the neighborhood community, that you didn't have to have 100% perfect ideological conformity on everything. And that's a better country. That's the country that we want to live in. But Harry's, I guess, doesn't think we ought to live in that country. Harry's doesn't think that conservatives deserve to have good razors. And you're free to make up your mind with what you'd like to do with that. It's kind of tough out there in the razor game today. You've got Gillette telling people that you should teach your daughter to shave her face. You've got Harry's now saying that conservatives don't have the right to get good razors. This shrinking of the private sphere where you can sort of have different views with your neighbors, and that's okay. This ideologization of everything. Is that a word? It'll be a word now. I use that word because it's much more specific, but we sometimes call it the politicization of everything now, including the razors. That I have to be condemned by my razor company because I hold perfectly ordinary views that most people have held for most of history about, the nature of man and the nature of these gender questions that have become very fashionable now. That is a really sad thing. And so we're really disappointed in that because we've got such great relationships with all of our advertisers, the ones that agree with us on lots of stuff, the ones that don't agree with us on lots of stuff. We just try to be good partners, just like we would be good neighbors with anybody around us, whether we have 100% conformity with them or 0% conformity with them. We try to be good neighbors and bring people good products. Really unfortunate that Harry's thinks that conservatives don't deserve good razors. I hope you enjoyed that clip from The Michael Knowles Show. To check out the full episode, hit the link in the description or download The Michael Knowles Show wherever you listen to podcasts.